Hi, Karl Karsgaard here at Scott Knox shop, Knox Tech in Ottawa. And Scott and his team have been doing the rebuild starting at the center section of the Halifax. They've been working very hard for months on end. And it's a chilly day here in November, late November. But I came down from the Bomber Command Museum in Alberta to see, how Scott is progressing with all the good stuff. And so we wanted to share that with you today.
Karl, as you know, the main box section of the main spar is made up of two 15-foot sections that are joined in the middle. So there's two sections of front spar and two sections of rear spar, and then they're joined via ribs that follow all the way along the full 30 feet. So this is the port side rear spar that was completed a few weeks ago. It's all bolted and riveted, the stiffeners are in place. This is basically ready to go, ready for reassembly with the rest of the wing when we're ready. That's the starboard side that we've made good progress on over the last couple of weeks. The part just behind you is the part of the original rib webbing.
Right.
Pardon me, the original spar webbing. And then this section in here is all new. When the wing was salvaged in Malta, it had been severed right through this section, give or take. So all this is new build using the extruded T-sections from sprung structures that they were so kind to provide. So in about maybe 2 weeks, this will be ready for reconstruction. What we're going to do is remount this rear spar in the jig, set it up on the floor, and then set the front spar in its proper position, and then starting putting the ribs in.
Sure. Well, Scott, we'll do some various shots here today at the shop to show the main spar, which is the front spar, and the rear spar. And obviously all of those spars come together to make a giant main spar. And then this half and this half will be spliced together, and it becomes the complete rear spar. And behind us are all of the ribs that you have rebuilt.
That's correct.
And you're just in the final stages of the very last pieces of the last ribs, wing ribs, to get ready for those. So we have all the main, if I could use the term, bones to start putting back together a center section, a core of a Halifax. So Scott, I'm looking, this is the first time I've seen the giant rear spar in the jig, and so can you explain some of the intricacies of making this baby be complete?
Right. So we have some key points here that we fix the booms to. We used a laser level to make sure that they were true, and then we put the booms into place and lock them into place. Again, checking dimensions all along, and then we put the webs into position, and then we clamp them down best we can, and then we start drilling. And the trick is that you start at one end and you move to the other end. And you have to be quite methodical, because in essence, think of it as like a rolling pin on dough. You want to make sure that you don't introduce any kind of a ripple or something into the material. So this one had to be completely rebuilt. So all these new rivets here, this replaces a part that was completely rotten. And I may have described it before, but when the parts when they become corroded, the aluminum flakes like a French pastry, and it balloons. It changes volume probably 10 or 12 times its original volume. So what it does is it just pops all the heads off the rivets as it rots. Yeah. It expands and just pops all the heads of the rivets off.
Wow,
so
it's kind of like it festers and then it just pushes all the hardware sideways.
Just pushes everything, it just takes the heads of the rivets, just takes them right off.
Wow.
So this whole section had to be all cut out. This section here is all new build. Some of the stiffeners were salvageable. This plate had all to be all rebuilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was The ribs, there was a little more work in the ribs than I was kind of hoping. This one was the worst one of the bunch. The rest, needed some cleanup, but there were 4 particularly bad ribs that I hadn't really banked on.
Right.
But c'est la vie, and now the corrosion is gone, and they're robust enough for the future.
Sure. And I just needed the audience to know out there, you're looking at the only guy on the face of this planet that's working on a Halifax bomber, because there is no other shop in Canada or in the world that's working on a Halifax bomber to save it for our Bomber Command Museum. So you and your team, you and Harry and all the lads, you're to be commended for this, because this is pioneering work, man.
It's a labor of love. I mean, I have a day job as well, but I come in here on the weekends, and the days go by, and it's you feel like you've accomplished something at the end of the day.
We're getting quite excited about that first core coming to Nanton, the first section of a Halifax completed, so we can build upon.
Exactly. No, it'll form the centerpiece of your displays and the future build.
I also wanted to tell you, Scott, that this is quite new. I had a teleconference last week with Gustav, the owner of the salvage tugboat, and Jan Christensen, who is running SC Diving. And we've decided that in the June, we're going to do 2 weeks. June of 2020, we're going to do 2 weeks of diving on the Halifax underwater. And I don't know, did you have a chance to see, after I cleaned the parts from the Halifax in Sweden, did you happen to see the video of the condition of those parts? Yeah,
and they looked phenomenal. Did a really good job cleaning those up. And I was curious, that's kind of a bit of a teaser. What else do you expect to find in the sand?
So here's the interesting thing, Scott, is on those parts that came from Sweden, I brought them back from Sweden to Canada. I cleaned them up on purpose. And these parts were on top of the sand for 76 years. And yet, if you look at the leading edge of the rudder, that aluminum panel, aluminium for our British friends, yes, you will see that they're in very good condition. They are templates for building another piece identical for a Halifax for display. And the bomb carrier made out of steel, the aluminium pieces, the stringer ribs, the rudder rib, all of that is on that video.
Right.
And I was amazed, and guess what? They were the parts that were on top of the sand.
Right.
And then we have this big field of sand, and most of the Halifax is under the sand. And as you know, if you have something protected by sand that's under the sand, then there will be even less corrosion than what we're seeing now. But those test pieces, it was very heartening to clean that up and see the clean aluminium in there.
It's amazing how when you first pull them up, they look unusable, and there's no hope, it seems. But then once you scrape off the barnacles and take off, the buildup over the years, lo and behold, the original parts are underneath there.
So Scott, that kind of winds up our program for today on the ReBuild Shop. It's late November. We've got our goals for the coming 2020. And so we just invite all our audience to come out and support us. We're doing everything we can to have a Halifax for the Bomber Command Museum. And I'd like to thank you for your good work and your team's effort to help us out.
Thanks so much, Karl. I mean, like I say, it's a real privilege to be able to work on a project like this. It's important to Canadian aviation history, and you folks out there, for those, have the means, please support us the best you can. I put my time in for free, but we do have a lot of other material costs and the operation of the shop, the heat and hydro, et cetera, all the material, the fasteners. It's an expensive endeavor, and so please support us. And the more support we get, the better job we can do. We can get better material, take more time on some of the parts. So there's a direct relationship. The more support we get, the better product we're going to get.
Great. Well, thanks, Scott. And folks out there, remember, we leave no Halifax behind. Thank you.